Done.
Yeah,
He is done. Tom Brady is done. For those that are just tuning in, and we saw it on the TV in our room. So, guys, we have a good show lined up for you here on the I Love Seville Network on Real Talk. Tony O'Brien in the house, Chris Fairchild in the house. When these gentlemen are in studio, we generally make some news, and it's no surprise we have media outlets watching the program as we speak. Gentlemen that are stakeholders in Fluvana County, influencers, if you may, board of supervisors, if you may. Keith Smith has put together a fantastic panel yet again. And Keith, we're very excited about this today.
Did he say fantastic?
Yeah.
I did say fantastic.
Keith Smith and fantastic in the same sentence.
Oh boy.
One of the things I enjoy when Tony and Chris come on the show is the zingers are flying left and right. Certainly left hooks and some right jabs are coming. Judah Wickower, how are you looking over there? You looking pretty fresh? We good to go? Okay. Keith Smith.
So typically Tuesdays are Batman and Robin show, but today we have Super Friends with us, and I asked Tony and Chris, what was their Super Friend? So Tony, what's your Super Friend? What are your heroes?
I really struggle with it. I'm a big fan of Spider-Man. I really do like Spider-Man a lot. I thought I was going to go with Thor, but I thought that was a little bit pretentious. So I just picked the Green Lantern.
See you as Thor.
Yeah, but the Green Lantern, that's pretty straightforward. The guy's got a big mansion, he's got a really cool car, and he's got a nice butler. No real special powers other than green lights.
Right.
That's pretty much you in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe.
You've seen his house, it sounds like.
And Chris, you chose something a little bit unique.
Yeah, Titanium Man. I've got.
But there's a story behind that, and you need to tell that story.
I got 7 titanium ribs, a titanium collarbone, and titanium thumb. So
You want to tell him where you got him from? My left jab or my right
from the
jab?
hospital.
Chris Fairchild. Hold on, I got the laugh track for Chris Fairchild on that. That was funny, dude.
Yeah. If you haven't noticed already, we're just going to have a lot of fun. These guys to my right known me for a long time, and I have a funny feeling I am not going to walk out of this unscathed.
I think you're right. We're streaming live to LinkedIn. Welcome, LinkedIn, as we add this program in live format for the first time on this network. Every month we add to the robust nature of our infrastructure, and we've improved our custom software even more, and now LinkedIn platform is live streaming all content on the I Love Seville network. No surprise, a heck of a lot of folks from a business ownership standpoint watching us on the LinkedIn platform. Judah Wickower, we're in your hands, and we can rock and roll when you are ready, sir. Guys, good Tuesday morning. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, across Fluvana County, Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, and the world here on the I Love Seville network. Real Talk presented by Yes Realty Partners. Find Yes Realty Partners online at yesrealtypartners.com. We're powered by Segura Solar. We are caffeinated by Dave Fafara and Shenandoah Joe's. We love Dave Fafara and Shenandoah Joe's. And if you look on screen, Pearl Certification, Interstate Service Company, Ross Mortgage. It's the supply chain that powers real estate here in Central Virginia. Trusted brands like Charlottesville Settlement Company, Keller Williams, and American Pest. Judah Wickower is our director. We welcome our friends on LinkedIn to the show in live format for the first time. Judah Wickower, let's go to the 4 shot and put a cast of characters on screen right here with Tony O'Brien, a.k.a. the Green Lantern, Chris Fairchild, a.k.a. Titanium Man, Keith Smith, a.k.a. Batman, and yours truly is Robin. Gentlemen, good Tuesday morning.
Good morning.
Hey.
Why don't we start with Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
How about an introduction, once again, of you to everybody that's watching?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tony O'Brien. I am on the Rivanna County Board, Fluvana County Board of Supervisors representing the Rivanna District. And when I'm not doing that, I run a business called Helix Computer Systems, which is right here in Charlottesville, and we've been proudly serving customers for over 20 years. for their IT needs and services.
I like that. Always be closing.
Always be closing, always be
Always be
communicating.
closing.
You're also the vice chair too, right?
I am the vice chair, yes. Yeah.
Congratulations on
Well,
that.
thank you.
One of our favorite people, Chris Fairchild. The man who does not seem to age over here. I believe a grandfather, Chris Fairchild. Is that right?
Number 5 now.
5 kids. Nice. Introduce yourself to everybody, my friend.
Chris Fairchild from Fluvana, grew up there and just elected to the Board of Supervisors for the Cunningham district, and served in 2011 for 1 year. I was appointed, and then we redistricted, and it was my seat that we went from 6 to 5 on. So since Don Weaver retired after 32 years and asked me to run for his position, and thank God I was successful and now here. So, and by the way, I'm not hungover. I put a stick in my eye yesterday. So
He was battling Mass Titanium.
Yeah, I think I would have went with the hungover instead of sticking the eye. Just
Yeah,
saying.
right.
Great stipulation there. Angela Reardon giving Chris Fairchild some props. Johnny
Hey.
Ordinalis, welcome to the
Hey, Johnny.
program. Johnny owns a fabulous El Mariachi in Zion's Crossroads.
Zion's Crossroads,
Eastman.
yeah.
Okay.
And actually, you two guys are going to get an invite. Johnny is going to cater, El Mariachi is going to cater Yona's 60th birthday party at the end of February. We're going to have it
Awesome.
at the Lake Monticello Firehouse. And the,
I think you should stop because you should never tell your wife's age. I'm just saying. So.
yeah.
oh no, she's good with it.
60 years young.
She's good with
better
it.
7/8.
And I had to tell her because she holds the purse string. So that's how that works. Right? That's how that works. So, hey, this is your first month under your belt, Tony. You're Tony. This is Chris.
There we go.
Yeah. So tell us how it's going so far, man.
I just always enjoy it. I mean, there's some volatile stuff, and right before I got on the board, they went through redistricting,
And you paid me a lot of money to make sure that we did not redistrict you out.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Come on, guys.
I mean, you got the media watching you right now.
That was a joke.
Yes, that was a joke.
I think people realize.
It was a unique time for the board, and unprecedented. And if they did redistrict, and then the state redistricted after, where the lines could have been and where it could have put who where, and so it's probably the right move to go to 5, but.
No,
Or to stay at 5,
Stay at
yeah.
five.
But, I was involved in trying to help decide where we should be, and then we had a big subdivision that was trying to come into Fluvana, and I was
I
pretty
was
involved.
all over the news.
Yeah, and I was for probably 6 months involved with that, and then just happened to have been there, I guess it was the last board meeting that we were there, and we had to vote on it, so it's been a pretty filled time to start into the Board of Supervisors, but it's almost like there's a little calm after the storm now.
Budget season.
Yeah,
Well, so
right,
that's what I
which
want to
is
get into,
easy.
Tony, right? So let's talk about Fluvana County. Let's talk about the state of the health, right? The state of the union for Fluvana County. You are beginning your budget season. For the few folks that aren't geeks like the three of us at the table, the four of us at the table, talk a little bit about that process, right? That's a little bit of a unknown. People don't really understand how that works
sure.
and how it impacts them.
Well, it's actually a very extensive process. Before the administration even comes to us, they've sat down and worked with the various different departments, as well as the various other constitutional officers, to decide on a budget that they think is the right budget for their services and their needs. They'll talk about things such as how many more staff members they might need. Do we need extra sheriffs, SRO officers? Have there been any savings from last year? What can we do to change is typically the question. We have a very dedicated, hardworking staff that cares about making sure that the taxpayers get real value for their dollar. And so they really sharpen their pencils. That budget is extremely transparent. So published right on the website. You can take a look at it. You can look at each department's needs and requests. And as in most cases, typically increases are due to the fact that we have inflation, right? And we have people that ask for raises, and the state provides raises, and then we have to match those raises. So that's typically where we end up having
And a growing population.
And a growing population, yeah.
So, Chris, you know a little bit about this, and I think where most people are affected by this is what their tax assessed value is, what the rate is going to be, and how much we're going to pay, right?
So put it in perspective, in the city of Charlottesville, councilors increased assessments, and they're considering a 13-cent increase on the tax rate.
Correct.
So that's a double hit right there. And the reason I put that on the radar is I think that's further going to drive tailwinds behind Fluvana County and people making a push to y'all's jurisdiction. Because this jurisdiction, let's cut to the chase, is getting extremely expensive to live here.
It is getting expensive to live here, both for rentals and for housing. And now, as you add in those increased tax values, that's going to drive both of those costs up as well, too. So, yeah, I mean, there's probably a 30%, 35% differential for the same home between Charlottesville and Fluvana.
It's interesting. It's getting closer. It always used to be 50%, 75%. I just ran the numbers on my house this morning, and if I was living in Albemarle County, I'm only paying about $1,000 less a year, which is not a huge number. And I actually contested the value of my home. In the process of doing it. I think they're a little bit on the high side, so we'll see how that process goes. So it's important for folks to know during the assessment thing, they can contest it, they can appeal it on that end of it.
Board of Equalization.
Board of Equalization. Do you want to talk a little bit of how that works, Chris?
I was on it for quite some time. The simple part of it is that if you feel your rate is not right or your house is not assessed properly, you go to the Board of Equalization and appeal, and the Board of Equalization makes a decision of what should happen with it from there. And sometimes you agree, and sometimes you send somebody out to look at the house again, and sometimes you say, sorry, all things seem to match.
How many times have you seen it go the other way? Someone make an appeal hoping for lower, and then, surprise, surprise, we got this wrong and it goes higher. You ever see that?
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't think you could do that.
I don't think you can.
That cannot happen.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a one-way.
Now, but you can, if they ask for an increase, if they think that they've been assessed too low, you can ask to say, I think I haven't been assessed properly, and actually increase value. So somebody who's maybe looking to sell their house
It's a barometer.
might do that, right?
Neil Williamson watching the program. I'm going to get out of your way. He has this to say to the supervisors. From the Free Enterprise Forum Local Government Spending Index, Fluvana County has a land area of 287.37 square miles. During the study period of 2000-2020, Fluvana was the second fastest growing locality, nearly 36%. Corresponding school enrollment in Fluvana County increased nearly 13%. And then he also adds on Twitter, in 2020, inflation-adjusted per capita spending was $2,559, the lowest of any locality studied. Hashtag content slinger from Neil Williamson right there.
That index that he does is just fabulous.
Awesome.
I mean, it really is. He does a great job. Anybody who hasn't looked at the Free Enterprise Forum should. It's just valuable information, tells you what your county's doing and what they're doing right and wrong, I think, from that standpoint. And again, just reiterating, Fluvana works really hard to keep those tax rates, or the total tax burden as low as possible. Everybody talks about tax rates, but there's two numbers to the equation. We all know that, assessed value and the rate itself. And when you add those two things together, that's your real burden. And Fluvana's real burden falls right in the middle of the pack there. It's not about the high rate.
And the rate discussion is a really interesting discussion to watch and be part of, because the value is set right by the real estate assessments on the end of it. The budget, in theory, is set at that particular point in time. Then it just becomes an issue of negotiating or getting through the rate, because you guys have to have a balanced budget, unlike the federal government, right? Right, you guys have to have a balanced budget, and anybody who's never actually attended these meetings and watched them, I would encourage you to do it. It's live now. You can do it on Zoom. It's a really interesting process. But from your perspective, Chris, do you want to talk a little, because you've been through this before? Talk a little bit about that process.
What process?
The rate setting process.
Well, it comes down to, at the end of the day, what items you wanted to be in the budget and how much money you want to spend. And if I could jump to one other item real quick, though,
Sure.
off that, somebody in our local government mentioned to me the personal property tax and said we ought to, in his opinion, maybe really ought to consider lowering the personal property tax for a period because it's inflated. I was just talking to a guy on the way in here. He bought 4 years ago his truck for $70,000. He's about to sell it today for $65,000. I went to buy a boat a couple weeks ago, and the boat is selling for more, it's used, than it was bought for a year and a half ago. And so this person said, during these times when we know these are crazy things that are going on that people can't figure out, and we know it's likely to come back down, it just doesn't seem like the time you should be assessing more on real estate, and maybe we should not get that virtual bump off of our taxpayers, and maybe we should lower the personal property.
Well, and last year during the budget cycle, that process had started. The Commissioner of Revenue didn't really know exactly what the bump was going to be till the very end in the budget cycle. That budget cycle was actually a little bit more of a difficult budget cycle, and the net result was, due to the increase in values of used cars primarily, it was almost $1 million bump for the county, and that's 3 cents on our tax rate right there.
For those who may not understand the personal property tax, so we have a tax on trucks, boats, vehicles, camper, that kind of thing. There's also a business property tax too in Fluvana County. What other sources of revenue other than personal property
Sales tax
and real estate taxes does Fluvana County have in its tool?
You guys got the meals tax?
No, we don't have a meals tax. We tried to put that into the because it has to be voted on. Right? So we tried to put that into the last election, two election cycles ago. I think it's technically, when you bring it up for a referendum, you then have to wait 4 years if it doesn't pass before you can bring it up again. Typically takes counties multiple iterations to actually get that passed. One big change though was now we could do the cigarette tax. So we, along with other folks are in the area, are assessing a new cigarette tax, and that cigarette tax and the whole taxation process is going to be managed by the TJPDC itself. Just makes sense to have an organization like that do it, because they're doing it for all of the different counties. They can hire just 1 or 2 people in order to manage that, versus having our county staff do that. So that's going to add maybe about almost a penny to the tax rate, which is important because we've got to diversify. One of the challenges Fluvana's always had is that we haven't had a very diversified tax rate, and we rely heavily on the real estate property tax rate, which is one of the reasons why we have a higher real estate tax property rate.
So we're a real estate show, right? So we need to talk about real estate. We've been talking about a lack of inventory for quite some time. I've got in front of me, which came out this morning, Charlottesville Association Realtors fourth quarter report. And it's interesting to take a look at it, the fourth quarter of 2020 versus the fourth quarter of 2021. Fluvana County actually was down by 14% in sales. So fourth quarter 2020, we had 161. This is the county on a whole. And 2020, we were 161. 2021, we were 139. So that's a negative 14% from your guys' side of the table. Any reason why you think that's happening?
Well, you just mentioned it, right?
What? Good.
Lack of inventory.
Lack of inventory.
Lack of inventory. I mean,
Well, it's interesting, but the sales price is going up.
sales prices is almost back to where it was in 2009, I think, for most properties now.
It's interesting. You should say that, Mr. O'Brien. Hold it. Green Lantern.
Thank you, sir.
I actually have a 20-year running spreadsheet of sales, but what year did you say it was going back?
I want to say 2000. Well, so one of the things Fluvana didn't do very well back then was we basically waited every 5 years, which is the requirement, before you actually have to do a reassessment.
I think it's 6, isn't it?
Maybe 6.
Yeah.
Maybe 6. So we waited, I think, between 2007 and 2012. And the net result was we went from really the top of the real estate market to the bottom of the real estate market. And so you saw values depreciate by almost 25-30%.
2006, Lake Monticello, median sales prices, that average was 320. Fluvana County's was 332.
Okay.
So that you're 100% right. We're back at 2006
Yep.
sales dollars at this particular point in
Which,
time.
I mean, if it was a value back then, it's a real value today, right? If you look at it from that perspective.
Well, I guess I'd ask you do you take the data that you just gave, Keith, as a positive or negative as far as that slowdown in growth?
So you're talking about the decrease in sales?
Yeah.
I think it's a negative personally, because what I want to cross-reference what the 2006 number was, we were selling homes in Lake Monticello and Fluvana County at that volume at between, depending on where you land, between 2006 and 2007, somewhere between 6 and 7% mortgage rates. We're at 3.5, 3.25, right? So the homes are actually cheaper now than they were in 2007 on the monthly payment perspective on it. The reality of it is, Chris, we talk about this all the time on the show. The buyer pool is the 20-foot deep pool right now where, the platform diver is happening. And the inventory pool is where Yona sends me over in the kiddie pool. Over here, I got to stay in the foot, right? That sounds about right?
Yeah, seen it.
You've seen it before. And look, interest rates are going to climb a little bit, but, we talk about it on the show, how interest rates are going to freak people out, right? But we were selling homes in our county in the $300,000 price range between 6% and 7%. So I don't think interest rates are going to impact it that much. 23.5 million millennials are coming into the market. The largest buyer pool in history, larger than Tony and I guess, are boomers, right?
I'm a boomer.
We're boomers. It's larger than our thing. So the point is where are they going to go? This inventory or this pressure on sales isn't going to decrease, and we talk about it on the show all the time, this rubber band effect, right? They're going to go out. We're looking at buyers in Harrisonburg that are coming all the way this way. So on one hand, I think it's great because people's values are going up. On the other hand, where is the $250,000 buyer going to go? It's not Lake Monticello.
So Buckingham County.
Why is that a negative for Fluvana?
Well, not necessarily Fluvana's for the regions, for the market.
He's saying it's a negative in that the ability to purchase a house and acquire the American dream is becoming, I don't want to say non-existent, but much more difficult than perhaps when we purchased homes. That's what he's
so I'm asking from a perspective of a member of the Board of Supervisors, meaning somebody has to help plan for and have the vision for of what Fluvana is going to become or remain like. And so I'm trying to figure out if that's where everybody's minds are on whether that's good or bad, that we've slowed things down a little bit.
We didn't slow things down. The market slowed things down that much because at the moment we only got 11 homes available at Lake Monticello. The median list price is $330 at the moment in Fluvana County. Pulling out Lake Monticello, we've got 29 homes on the market, a little bit higher, $397, close to $400,000.
But it could be we too, because the policies that Fluvana County sets helps to decide how much growth comes in.
Without a doubt.
And where.
Maybe that's a good entryway to the recent subdivision conversation right outside the lake. A lot of folks asking about that on the feed. I know that was certainly in the news. Do we want to cover that at all?
Sure. We're definitely going to have blows here.
So that was a topic that we've been covering. It's a topic that's in the news. We do have media watching.
So it depends. How is Green Lantern and Titanium Man going to do?
I think you said Titanium Man's a bad guy.
I did say it.
I'm okay with that.
I like Fairchild.
But to circle back just before we jump into that, because I think it is a good question, and I think that any time you create artificial restraints to growth, if you would.
Are you talking red tape?
No, well, I'm not talking red tape here. I'm just saying that basically if you take a policy of being no growth in a particular county, you do run the risk of, you get the benefit initially because your prices are going to go up, but then you run the risk of suddenly not falling in line with the rest. And when there is a downturn in the market, you can see your prices drop pretty substantially from that standpoint. Jesse Rutherford, who's one of our colleagues on the Nelson County Board of Supervisors, said he had personally had kind of a shift, and we were talking at the TJPDC, and he said, look, we don't have workforce in Nelson County. We can't get workforce. And if we don't have housing for the folks, we're not going to get that workforce.
So interesting, right? Tony, Nelson County dropped 38% year over year.
Yeah.
In sales.
Sales,
which is a huge number because they went the other way the year before. They jumped 54% or 57%. I can't remember at this point, but I found that to be a strikingly number. The only one that had an actual increase was Charlottesville Charlottesville and Greene. That was plus 14%, and Greene was plus 15%. So this all came in hot this morning. I didn't get a chance to dig too much into it, but
that also means they had a reduced burden to build more schools
Less wear and tear on roads,
Right.
less wear and tear on infrastructure. And Fairchild's making the point, and I don't want to assume here, that you're still getting the revenue from increased real estate values without making the population even more dense or even more populous, which means the county, from a certain circumstance, has preserved quality of life.
Right.
Less traffic on roads, less traffic on water, less traffic on green space. That's kind of what you're saying here, right?
One of my things I'd say during my campaign was rural preservation plus sensible economic development results in lower cost of living and greater quality of life.
You did say that.
Yeah, and that just sums up genuinely how I feel.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, again, the challenge is, what is that, what does that look like? So in this not land use conversation, but in this rezoning conversation, ironically, a lot of the impetus that sort of drove a large number of people from the lake, and even the Lake Monticello board itself, to ask that the development not be approved, was coming from folks that had moved into one of the largest developments in the area,
Sure.
into the growth zone of the area, of Fluvana County, and didn't want to see that change. We got most of the people that were against this coming from the lake itself. But the other problem that the county has is that it develops in its master plan, basically, growth areas. And it says to the community, this is where we think we're going to have growth. So right now we have 5 growth areas that we've targeted, but really only 2 of them are technically viable for the time being.
Because of water and
Because
sewer.
of water and sewer.
Yeah.
And actually really only one is, and that's the lake at present. We are going to have water and sewer
Well,
coming.
that's on
Zions Crossroads.
that's on my question list here for you
Yeah,
guys.
it is coming, right? It is coming, but you're going to have folks come in and say, okay, why do we want this growth in Zions Crossroads? Well, we're investing millions of dollars so that we have that growth both for industry and, you're going to get with that industry that workforce need, and so you got some housing required with that as well too. So you're going to have those challenges come into place, and we as a county, I think, have to be very careful about the expectations that we set. Look, if you're a landowner and you bought into a particular area and you wanted that land to be developed at some point in time, isn't it your right to ask for that to happen? And shouldn't it be your expectation that the local officials are going to follow the rules? I mean, and let me just finish with this one
Yes, I
thought.
know.
Let me
This is
just
gonna
finish this
jump
with the
in
one
on
thought.
this.
Okay,
I need a notepad.
imagine if New
I
York
got your
City.
titanium, man.
Okay, imagine if New York City didn't exist. Where would those millions of people?
Keep talking.
Where would those millions of
think he's good
people
with that.
be displaced to? Well, they'd be displaced into the countryside
Sure.
of New York, right? So, do you allow smart growth, or do you limit the growth and then allow by right growth? And in this particular development case, the developer made a point, and he said, if we don't do it in this
We talking
120
southern here?
acres, if we don't do it in this
Okay.
120 acres, the same growth will likely occur, but it'll occur over 700 acres.
Yeah, sprawl.
Sprawl.
Yeah,
sprawl.
Sprawl. And the opportunity cost of sprawl is potentially that land not being developed as efficiently as possible. And the opportunity cost of sprawl is potentially more wear and tear on infrastructure because people are driving further. That's the point you're
Driving
making.
further, school buses have to go further,
Right.
the roads have to be cleaned. Sheriff's
environment.
office, environment, all of that has an impact.
Now, Chris Fairchild is itching to jump in here. I can tell right here.
And I've been like dancing.
Yeah, I know.
So first, let me say to workforce housing, it's when I first heard that term early last year, that we should be trying to bring people into the county. That's like voodoo economics, because when I was chairman of the Economic Development Commission, it was all about we got to get the burden off the rooftops and get more businesses in here so the people pay less on taxes. Now we're saying bring in more people that we'll need more schools for and so on. And so
But will we need more schools, Chris? Because
We're already planning for the next one.
I get that, but if we're tracking,
You guys would definitely need more schools.
Yeah.
Look at the population.
but
These millennials are coming in, they have kids.
No, they're not coming in because we're not letting them come in.
that well,
No,
we're
if you
still
let them
housing
come
water.
in, the point is if you let them come in, yeah.
Well, the boomers are going to sell and then the
Just like
millennials.
several elections.
Now, this guy's doing, I like it. Daryl Hammond saying great points right now. Garland
we need to
Knuckles watching the
switch.
program.
Garland.
Daryl, good guy.
So let me try to get this train of thought out, guys. If you don't,
Please.
But can I just finish mine real quick? I'm sorry.
Sure, of course.
Because I'll lose it. There is a bubble that I call the Lake Monticello Beltway. And that's where all that growth is going because there's infrastructure there. And for somebody to walk into a room that halfway into the party isn't so crowded, and then later in the party it's shoulder to shoulder and go, it's a little bit crowded. You can't say, dude, you weren't one of the first people in the room, how can you say that? No, there's a point where the people that have come in also, the come heres and the from heres, have started saying together, this is getting to be a bit much, not only because it's getting packed and it's no longer the rural environment that the come heres and from heres enjoyed, but it's starting to become unsafe to be in there.
But in 1968 and 1969, where we are today was going to happen.
All right.
Right, and so it put context to that. When Lake Monticello was built in 68 and 69, and 4,500 lots were built, when you've been here your whole life, I've been here since 87. When I first moved here in 1987, I think there were 600 houses, and like 300 of them for sale, right? It was, nobody ever came out here. So now we're 4,500 homes, 4,300 homes, depending on the math you want to do it. I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate just to kind of
But there's a whole beltway of what's coming in around the peninsula.
Absolutely, but I want to play a little bit of a devil's advocate to my comment about the schools, because we have the potential of going Nelson County's route.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying it's going to happen or not.
What's that mean specifically?
So Nelson County is reducing its students because most of the folks buying in there are my age and up. Right? So when you're having 397, 400,000, the new construction over at Broken Island is, I just looked at it this morning, the median sales price is almost 500 grand there, right? And I took a look in who the buyer profile is.
So you're saying you're pricing out parents?
You're pricing out parents, you're bringing in Keith and Yona that has cash from someplace else. Most of the buyers over there, because I've looked into them, it's 40, 50 units or something like that. Almost all of them got master bedrooms on the first floor. Almost all of them are empty nesters. So eventually that's going to affect the school system. What I'm personally worried about this conversation, and you know my family better than anybody, and so does Tony, my mother and father can't afford to live in Fluvana County any longer. They literally can't.
Oh, I mean, they can if they go into Keith and Yona's basement.
Yeah,
like
right.
I said, they can't afford to live in Fluvana County.
They might have to do some laundry and some chores if they do that.
Like I said, they can't.
But why? They live in the home they've lived in for a long time.
Fixed income is what he's saying.
Fixed income. My father's a retired New York City fireman. He's on a fixed income. When the inevitable happens, Chris, and my father passes away, my mother loses the pension 100%. Right?
And then gentrification really starts burning.
Then gentrification starts coming in.
Yeah.
We're blessed, right?
Yeah.
We got plenty of room. Mom and dad can come into us. But I will tell you, and you know my history, right? I've built almost 600 homes in Lake Monticello. Most of these folks are in my mother's and father's age. They're retirees. And the conversation I'm having with them at the water cooler or over at the firehouse over a beer, or maybe not a beer, over a cup of coffee, I can't afford just to live here any longer. So how do we balance that? How do we balance that?
That conversation's not unique to Fluvana. Right. To add context, that's happening in Albemarle. It's happening in the city of Charlottesville. It's happening across Central Virginia, especially with inflation, supply chain issues, cost of goods issues, and people flooding into this area with this Zoomtown mentality.
So that's why, in my opinion, and I'm thankful to you, Chris, because you put me on the Planning District Commission, that we're at a point right now that we can't just think about it as Fluvana, we can't just think about it as Charlottesville, we can't just think about it as Green. We have to think about this, in my opinion, a little bit more regionally, because what happens in Fluvana impacts Charlottesville, what happens in Charlottesville impacts us.
I agree with that to some extent. While if you build a 55 and older development in Fluvana, very few of those people that move into that are going to come from Fluvana. If you go to Nahor Village, I don't know of one family of 70 some homes. I don't know of one household that's people that grew up in Fluvana or were the parents of people I grew up with or any of that.
But they moved from Lake Monticello there, though.
Some did, but those people, when they came into Lake Monticello, they came in from somewhere else. So if you build a 55 and over, and that brings more people into Fluvana, it's not really, your father is not the average person who's going to get served by that. And I don't feel a need to say, kumbaya, send me your whatever that is, your weak and your poor or whatever.
You got an extra room over there, right, at your place?
Yeah. But
You're saying it's not your responsibility.
It's not, I mean, as far as that regional mentality, yes, we're in it together. Yes, what I do affects what you do. But there's also not, I'm not going to invite you to live in my bedroom. And so, you know, I know you're poor, come live in my house. There's a certain extent that I need to go, this is my house. And why raise the cost of living where I live so I can bring in more people from Charlottesville or Albemarle to come live with us?
So
Well, you're assuming that the cost of living is going to increase because the argument has typically been made that more rooftops equals a higher tax base. But you've got to balance that out against actual development and growth in industry in your area. And you got to actually balance that out against the income tax that's earned by the people that are there. And I think that number is often very skewed. And then you've got to also balance that out with the actual demographics in your county. So, you know, the assumption is every new rooftop is going to result in 2.2 kids in the school. That's not even close to being true, because every new person buying in Fluvana County doesn't necessarily have kids.
And millennials are having less kids.
And
No,
you look
we
at the
already
census,
know that,
yeah.
that as a general rule, the rate does go up with growth. And if it doesn't, where is this oasis that has had more growth than us? It's everything we're trying to become that has a lower tax rate and a great quality of life.
I mean,
there's just not many of them to point to.
Albemarle County.
I would argue there isn't any, right? Because
That's exactly my point.
Tony, you've been on the board how many years now?
8 years now.
8 years.
Starting
Have
my
you
ninth
ever seen a budget go down year over year?
We have actually done
Yeah.
that, and it's pretty rare, and usually that is not a true going down because it's related to the assessment. You know, and
But
so the
my
assessment
monthly,
bumps it,
what
but
I pay per month in my mortgage payment, I've been here since 1987,
Yeah.
I've seen it go down.
hasn't gone down. Sometimes it stayed flat.
Flat would be
Flat
good.
is-
So I'm going to bring us back to that earlier question of, was that a negative that the growth is going down? What's the benefit for Fluvana County
Your
of having more residential growth?
Your kids can buy a home there. They can live next to you. That's a benefit. A business can start over there that actually serves the community.
Because it has
That's
a density
benefit.
of customers.
Because it has a density of customers.
It also impacts the money from the state too,
It impacts the money from the state.
for the
absolutely.
school
Right.
systems.
You know, do you want, I think the other thing too is if you allow artificial pricing, when I say artificial pricing, if you're basically restricting growth, do you really want to live in a county where everybody is super wealthy? I mean, maybe you do, you know, but on the other hand, I think there's a lot to be said for having a very diverse community with people coming from various backgrounds, various income levels that offer to their community. That's one of the things I love learning about the lake. You know, yes, there were a lot of retirees, and yes, it's converting, and some of these houses are now becoming more and more expensive. But you know what? I could be sitting there with my next door neighbor who, you know, works as a school teacher or works at the sheriff's office, you know, maybe is only making $50,000, or I could be sitting there with a retiree from New York, you know, who's living the high life on the waterfront.
The mass of my district, the Cunningham district, is not like Monticello, as you know, and it's over towards Scottsville. And boy, if there's legacy in the county,
It's there.
legacy is in that district in the Scottsville area, and there are young people that are 20, 22 buying houses, getting married, that's a written house or whatever, moving into homes, building homes in Fluvana, and they're not.
And you know why they can do that? Because Fluvana County actually was one of the first counties ever to adopt an ADU, auxiliary dwelling unit. So the Rittenhouse or Chris can actually carve off a piece of property on your 20 acres or 30 acres, whatever you own, and let your children come in and do that. But everybody else doesn't have that opportunity.
No, there's plenty of homes being bought throughout Scottsville. I mean, they're not all just carving it off. Some of that, yeah, but I mean,
Your district
I don't-
also has the advantage of more affordable real estate than, say, where the lake is at, where some of these other pockets of Fluvana County. You could make a strong argument that the Cunningham district is one of the most affordable from a inventory standpoint in
Could be, I
Fluvana.
don't know.
Fork Union.
Yeah, would
Yeah.
you? What are your thoughts on that?
Fork Union is certainly more
Yeah, I
affordable
would
than-
argue Fork Union is maybe more cost effective simply because of the distance.
Sure,
Right.
and Columbia District has a
And
lot of.
Columbia, again,
Yeah, I wouldn't
because
say so much.
But is that a good thing that you're basically forcing people to drive as far out as
well,
they
there's
can?
a substantial,
Right,
just to
there's a cost
answer the
to that,
Cunningham
right?
question, there's a substantial amount of subdivisions
Yeah.
in Cunningham. I built a couple of them myself,
And Fox Hollow, and yeah,
but they are in your beltway.
yeah.
And I'll tell you, you know, Chris, you know, I'm a big personal believer of, you know, create a comp plan, work it, stick to it, on that end of it. You guys are about ready to go through your comp plan process. So this is why this conversation we're having, right? Revisions, that's what you're in the middle of right now?
They've been in process for a while now.
Been in
yeah.
process for a while,
Yeah.
but this calendar year is the year we're going to adopt our new comp plan, which is going to last for 5 years.
Yeah.
So this is why I really wanted to have you guys here, because this is an important discussion we're having, to have the public involved
Public's commenting too.
input on that. Do we want to take some comments from the feed or just?
Sure, I'm happy to do it. You want to go down that road?
We can go down that road. I just want to finish a little train of thought real quick, if you
Please,
don't mind.
please.
We're all business folks here, right? One of my concerns is if we do not increase rooftops and develop Zion's Crossroads as our economic engine production, which we'll talk about here in a minute, we're going to price people out of Fluvana County. Fluvana County folks are not going to be able to stay in here because of taxes on the end of it. So I'm personally just really concerned about that my mother and father, people that I know in here, they're just not going to be able to afford, and not everybody can live with me and Chris, but eventually we're just going
Or want to.
Or
Right.
Yeah.
you're talking about Chris, right?
And I'm okay with that.
I mean, and real quickly, workforce is changing. I was on the Go Virginia meeting yesterday. I'm one of the direct members on the board there, and
You should
on our
explain
little
what Go-
round
you should
table.
explain what Go
Well, Go
Virginia
Virginia is basically the state effort to bring money and collaboration for certain types of projects, and those projects are typically involved in, say, public infrastructure, site development, and multi-county, right? So they really want to have multi-county.
That's
So
what I
for
wanted you to get
example-
at.
So for example, Louisa County is developing a business park, and they are a recipient of a Go Virginia grant. And that business park is going to be in between Charlottesville and Richmond, and is probably going to employ a lot of people into that area. And so this is a multi-regional plan. They invited other counties to participate in that program. So, this is the purpose of Go Virginia. But we were talking about workforce issues. And getting people in to work. And one of the things that's changed and is going to continue to change is you can now have people come in and work remotely, but that doesn't help a manufacturer, okay? That doesn't help somebody who actually needs labor on hand right there. It can push the prices out, but if you're earning $18 an hour and you have to drive an hour and gas is $4, is that effective
We did
for
a
you?
whole show
Right.
about that, on how that impacts the cost of living. And owning a home isn't PITI, right? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It's fuel, it's vehicles, it's electric, that you have to pay in water on that end of it.
But understand that when you get that industrial, again, to what you're talking about, workforce housing, good chance you're going to have to invite in more people to get that industrial. And I find myself just going, what are we doing? Why do we just keep growing the bubble?
There are other people that will say, and this comes up in our survey that we do every year, we don't have any industry in Fluvana. We don't have any business in Fluvana. So my tax rates are high. My tax rates are high because I have no offsetting business income to offset that from that standpoint. So yes, you can be no growth, you can be entirely rural. I'd argue, that is a lack of the use of the resources that a county has. Louisa County has one of the lowest tax rates in the area, and they also drive an enormous amount of income, and they have 5 exits. And they are going to leverage each one
And
of
they
those
get,
exits.
I think, about $18 million a year.
They get a ton of money
from the
that.
power plant.
But they get $7 million a year
And-
from Zion's Crossroads.
And they've had more than double the growth of Fluvana County over the past 10 years, and in large part because of all this business that came to Zion. So it's not comparable necessarily to say, look what's happened to their tax rate. I mean, they're building more schools and more
Sure.
infrastructure.
Yeah,
Louisa was up 5%, by the way.
and they're investing. I mean,
So that kind of
shopping
gets
tax rate, that's the place to go right now.
that kind of gets me into what I want to talk about, right? The Zion's Crossroads Small Area Plan, right? Which is the Planning District Commission is putting on it. But before I do that, Tony, you probably know these numbers better than I do. One of my concerns is, how much is this water going to cost us? How much has Fluvana County invested to bring water? Just round numbers, roughly.
So just for Zion's Crossroads area?
Just for us, right?
Well, I mean, or just for Fluvana County?
Fluvana County, just for us meaning.
So,
Fluvana County.
I mean, when I started on the board, we basically had no infrastructure other than aqua, and so really no public water system. FUSD is a public water system in Fork Union that has been around, serves a small number of folks, but it's not really considered a major water system from that standpoint. It's driven by its wells, and the wells are pretty much
Tony, specifically
maximizing
the Zions
use.
Crossroads.
Zions Crossroads area, we're investing probably around $20 million, $25 million altogether, and that's including the ZXR project, which is a project that comes from the Department of Corrections down into Zions Crossroads, which has both water and sewer, limited capacity, and our investment in the JRWA, which is a joint project between Fluvana County and Louisa. But I will note that we are only paying for a small portion of that, and Louisa County has invested, I think, close to $60 million, or 40, somewhere between 45 and 60 million.
So let's just call it
on that
25 million,
project.
just for the sake of a talk show, right?
Yep.
And the reason I bring that up is and the reason I made a motion to have Fluvana and Louisa to talk about this, I kind of brushed off my old developer hat. I took a look at what space we had in Fluvana County. And we're spending $25 million to bring water and sewer to Zions Crossroads, and we don't have a lot of availability of land to do that, right? So from a business perspective, I'm thinking, okay, I'm spending $25 million. I only have this much area to go ahead and develop. I better work with my partner next door, because I don't know how I'm going to pay for this $25 million bucks. Because otherwise, it's coming off of my rooftop to go ahead and do it. Because we all agree at this table that more commercial, more business tax in the Zions Crossroads will help my mother and father stay in Fluvana County, or in my basement, which I have to finish.
Which is still in Fluvana.
It's still in Fluvana. Any thoughts on that, guys? Because I don't know how, I can't reconcile this in my head from a business perspective, from a ledger side of
You
it.
can't reconcile the investment that we've made?
No,
Is that what you're
I get the investment, I understand it, but
The return?
the return, yeah. Where are we, when is this happening, right?
When is water happening?
Well, not so much water, but when are we going to start bringing some businesses there to offset?
Saying, what's the value proposition of this?
Thank you.
Well-
Thank you for getting me out of trouble there.
Yeah.
In all fairness, I mean, we have brought in a lot of businesses over the last, I'd say, 6-7 years, and more businesses are coming to the Zions Crossroads area in expectation of that growth in that area. So progress has really been made from that standpoint. I think you could probably say we've created somewhere in the neighborhood of about 600 jobs in the last few years. I think that's a reasonable number that's good, and I think part of the metrics that we should be using in terms of the success of our county is how much new job creation are we bringing into the county. I think that's an important point. But at the end of the day, you get criticized if you do it, and you get criticized if you don't do it.
Yeah.
People say, well, why did Louisa do that? Well, because they made the investment.
No, because they owned all four corners of
Well, they
64
also
and
own four
15.
corners
Well,
there too. But does
We
it,
also got a couple board of supervisors from Louisa on the show right now,
Yeah,
guys.
but
Welcome
Now,
the
to be honest,
Yep.
they got it right 30 years ago, in my opinion.
They
right?
did, yeah.
They got it right to put water and sewer in Zions Crossroads, and we didn't.
But they also
That
wanted
is-
to partner with Fluvana County
Again-
for about 40 years, and Fluvana
You don't
County
think that's
kept
a
on
fair
saying
comment?
No,
I was hoping.
I used to always get calls and say, when I was chair of the Economic Development Commission, people would say, how come we're not building on our side of 64? And I go, we don't have a side of 64. We don't start, Fluvana doesn't start until the Palmyra side of 250. Target was not going to go a mile off of
Agreed.
64 when Walmart's on the corner of 64. So to say, we could have gotten what they did, why didn't we do what they did? Because we don't own what they own. And even,
True, but as-
to the conversation of the water line, oh, we should have done this 10 years ago. Well, maybe not, because that corridor is backing up now. They're hitting the Green Springs district. And so it's got to come to the other side of the interstate. And I don't think we're far away from when that corridor is now going to need our space.
Yeah.
And so the water line, if we'd have built it 10 years ago, they weren't going to be building all of that stuff over in Fluvana County. So I might make the argument, we just got it right.
Well, and I would say that was, part of the discussion that was happening 8 years ago when I was looking at this was
Yeah.
there was a whole conversation about whether we should or shouldn't do it. If you remember, probably about 4 years before that, there had been a referendum that had been shot down with a joint project with Louisa as well, too. So, yeah, but if you look at it, that process, and it really has been a 40-year process, that process was derailed 12 years ago, barely made it 8 years ago, barely made it, one vote, right? Barely made it, and we still don't have water. We're going to get it this year. That's not a question mark. We're right there. Pipes are full of water. They're tested. We're basically ready to turn on the sprinkler system, if you would. But we're going to get it. But we're still going to have to wait another 5 or 6 years, probably, 4 to 5 years for the water to come from JRWA. And that's where we have.
So
real
that's
water.
why this small area plan, in my opinion, is so important, and that's why the regionality conversation, in my opinion, is so important, and to bring our partners from Louisa County together and work and jointly develop this. As if you take a look at the map, it becomes a bigger circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
We geographically have something, and then I'm sure there's all kinds of discussions at the board level about income sharing, so forth and so on. But if we're just dependent upon, as Chris said, the four corners over, I just don't think we're going to bring in enough revenue to offset that.
And I said back in 2011, when the whole water line thing was going on, this goes to exactly, and I don't mean to sound like I told you so, but I said.
I told you so.
But yeah, I said, that little pocket, we're going to make all this investment to get that water up there, and that little pocket's going to fill in. And we're going, no, this growth zone, really, we're just going to stay right there. And then all of a sudden, we're going to put some apartments in there, which are going to now be a net negative, but it took up some of that space where we need to get water to. And then when we don't get that, when this isn't getting the return, when it's not paying the bills, we're going to have to grow the growth zone. And that
We
pocket,
actually
to your
have
question,
not
will get
approved
larger.
any
So
major
this
developments in the Zion's Crossroads area.
No, I'm talking about the future.
Well, the future, technically the board won't do that, okay, because we've invested and we have such a small amount of water coming from the ZXR that
It's like 80,000 gallons.
yeah, it's 75, 80,000 gallons. One development could wipe that out.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that now. I'm one vote, I get that, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to do it, and I'm pretty
Well,
sure a
even
couple
one
other
commer-
members.
one
But once
decent-
JRWA water comes in, will that happen? Potentially, sure.
One decent commercial connection will eat up most of that, because you got to keep your fire protection in
Yeah.
there, folks.
And by the way, I'm not anti-growth. Growth is
You're strategic growth.
Growth is right, and growth is going to come.
I think we're all strategic growth. It's just a matter of
I don't want to. I don't
He's
want to
tempered
necessarily.
strategic growth.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to promote residential growth. It is a net negative, and I'm more saying, if our comprehensive plan says that it was going to be around a lot of it around Lake Monticello, we need to be smart enough to say that is built as a guide, as a tool for us, and just the right time for us to be dealing with a comprehensive plan to step back and go, hey, there's some things maybe we didn't foresee. One of them might be COVID. So what happened with COVID that made this real estate market in part go
Zoom
crazy?
towns.
Zoomtown.
Work
Right,
from an
so-
ISP.
Right. So to go back to the
And we
comprehensive
got
plan,
Firefly, so this is going to be even better.
to go to the comprehensive plan and say, look, that's what we said we're going to do. What else in America is sticking with what they said they were doing in 2015 post-COVID?
well, and that's a great point.
And it's
and-
why you have to do it every 5 years.
And right, you do it every 5 years, and 5 years ago we reduced the growth area in Palmyra due to folks saying they didn't
Yeah.
think that was a
Yeah.
good idea, and we didn't really have the infrastructure there. So, yes, it is a document and it is a process, but there are two sides to that document, and that is, that you get the feedback, you lay it out, and then you give it to potential landowners, potential developers, and you say, this is what we think we want to do. When you don't follow those guidelines, you risk, ostracizing your community from developers that want to come in. If I'm Home Depot, and one of the first things I'm going to do is get research information on how that county behaves. If I know that is a negative approach towards growth, why am I going to spend time and energy and effort doing that? Okay, why wouldn't I go to the next county over where I know that they have a model that they stick to what they say they're going to do? And I'm not saying we have to do it every single time, but we better be very careful.
The comprehensive plan-
about sticking with what we lay out.
So, with all due respect, when you talk about that aspect of the comprehensive plan, talking about that growth, it's like talking about what the Bible says in one section and saying, here's what that says. Except for if you read the rest of the text around it,
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily mean that every woman should have a veil over her head when she goes into every church, and there's more that the comprehensive plan says, and I think it's 17 times it talks about, and it actually says the overarching theme is to protect Fluvana's rural character.
But if you have
and it
sprawl, you're
says,
not protecting
and it says in the growth zones
Yeah.
that not every property is prime for that type of growth. And talk about sprawl, Village Gardens would have taken 7 developments of the same of that roughly 50 acre. If you take properties that are the same size that could have roughly 50 homes, it would take 7 developments to get
700
that
acres,
same.
actually.
700.
That's what I'm saying.
I did the math.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
The
it takes
problem with- the
seven
problem with
developments
Chris-
to get the same thing, and that's not going to happen as quickly as 300 some homes are going to pop up there.
I would disagree with you.
How
And-
so? How so?
Because it's going to happen. It's already going to happen. It will daisy. So here's the reality of it. The market plays an impact on this. We talk about this 4 times a week for almost 3 years. Unless something happens that we all don't know about,
Yeah.
the buyers are coming in, and they're coming
Right.
in huge things, and there's nothing we can do or anything to slow them down. What's going to happen here, what I'm concerned is a Fluvana of since 35 years, they will daisy chain. That particular project will be 60 homes, 70 homes. It will go by right.
Yeah.
And then there's one across the street, and there's one, they're going to daisy chain all the way around. So you'll eventually get the 150 to whatever. I didn't even follow the project as
Yeah.
far as the count goes, but whatever that is, it's eventually going to interconnect.
Eventually, but as I said,
Oh, it's
To-
going to happen a
to-
lot faster than.
but not as quickly as that'll happen there. And let me ask you, can developers profitably do buy right in Fluvanna today?
Yes.
Yeah, most
So-
of our developments are by right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So it's a path. So
well,
it's a path of least resistance.
Right. So
It's a path
so
to expensive houses.
when that growth zone fills in, are they going to take their toys and go home?
The county would have to make a decision as to whether it wants more growth there or not. But the point that I was trying to make
By
is that
right, they can
the-
continue to do what they're doing throughout Fluvanna. They're not
That's
going to say,
exactly-
well, we
that's exactly
filled in these couple bubbles. We're done with Fluvanna. Let's look over there. They're still, it's the business they're in. They're still going to go by right. So it's not one or the other. When they're done with these, if we haven't created more growth zones, which means eat up more territory, they're going to go out and build subdivisions on 100 acres.
Right,
We're-
and is
they're-
that a good thing?
It's going to be both.
Well, the point being is that the market is what demands the growth, right? So if the market is hot and people need to move to a place, the question is, are they going to move to a by right subdevelopment where 75% of the land is kept rural, and that's a wonderful thing in the right areas, in non-growth zone areas, or are they going to move to a location where there is a higher density,
They're gonna
lower
do
cost
both.
of home?
They're gonna do
They're
both.
gonna do both.
So guys,
They're gonna do both.
so
Right.
little technical things here. To do this is going to require central water and sewer, right? You're going to need that. So that's where they're going to daisy chain off of Lake Monticello, Aqua Virginia's water and sewer. But I just want to bring it back to the comp plan so the folks that are watching or listening understand this. The comprehensive plan is a non-obligatory document. It's just a vision, right?
It's a guideline.
It's a guide.
Yeah.
The subdivision ordinance is the conversation we're having right now has the force of law, right? And so, what'll happen is they'll take a look at it and they'll say, okay, here's my by right, here's my boxes, I need to check, and that's what they'll just do, and they'll daisy chain.
But one
out
thing
that-
you won't get with by right is you won't get proffers.
You
Okay.
will not have
So,
proffers.
In this case, it was being proffered by the developer to make repairs and to basically make the Monash Gate safer. And that's $1 million some odd plus proffer. Now, it's still a very dangerous intersection. There are people that get killed there. There are bad accidents there. And it's a dangerous intersection. The lake technically should be the ones that makes the repair, but they're not going to make the repair because they don't have to. And now the county and the lake should be speaking and saying, how do we make this safer? Because we have an obligation to our citizens to keep those roads as safe as possible.
You're going to get
So we
100.
lose that proffer by saying no in that particular example.
Except you got 50 homes compared to 340.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
you're gonna get the homes. That's
So
the point.
what Chris is saying is you got 50 versus 300 plus, so the cost out of the Fluvanna budget is going to be less on wear and tear on roads and on infrastructure, where potentially that money can be allocated to some of the stuff you're talking about.
And if
mean-
you're going to have 50 there or 340, plus those by rights are going to happen outside of that growth zone, would you rather have 50 or 340 plus the by rights outside of that growth zone? I'd rather have 50 than 340.
So this revision of the comprehensive plan
It's
is
two very different perspectives right there.
Well,
Yeah. And
Two very different
and that's good to have.
Yeah,
Just
it's great
right-
for government.
God bless it.
Yeah.
Amen.
This is a good thing, and this is what I would hope we would do today. You guys have both dear personal friends, and both of you helped me, Chris in particular, helped me through a very difficult time in my life, and I want to thank him for that.
Amen.
Publicly on that end of it. Probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with him if it wasn't for him. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
For
We
doing
got,
it.
we got, we got a lot of comments from Fluvana on the feed here.
Can I just say one quick thing about this? One time I was in a room blessed to be in a room with John Warner right before he was retiring, a group of us. And somebody asked, what's different about than when you were first serving?
Ooh,
And he
great question.
said, when I was first serving, when the day was done, at the local restaurants and bars was everybody involved.
Yeah.
And sometimes you were getting drunk together, sometimes you were cussing each other, but then you woke up hungover together tomorrow, and you had to do it all over again, and you earned respect, and you worked with each other, and you could disagree and still care about and enjoy the person.
And you asked
respect.
about the dog, the grandkids, the
Right, right.
kids.
Yeah.
You guys cared. You cared.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
we never do that, right?
yeah. Only with bourbon.
Only with bourbon. Rye.
We're,
We got plenty of
Okay,
time.
shoot,
This is
question.
good.
we got
Plenty
plenty.
of time.
Great.
This is good.
Oh, one thought, though.
Like, really good.
Okay, but one thought on this. You had said it's a guide, right? But you also told me a story the other day, if I may share it, about the piece of land that you own and when you bought it and why you bought it, right? Okay. Is it okay if I share?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you basically, your mom said, hey, this is going to be a really good, valuable piece of property. You should buy it. You were a young buck entrepreneur, thinking, okay, yeah, this is good. I'm going to make more money doing this. And so you bought that land with that intention, right? And that was your right to do it if it actually happened. And, by all rights, if you looked at the comprehensive plan at that point in time, it was just waiting. It's just a matter of waiting for the right time. But then you went out and you went hunting, and this time you didn't poke yourself in the eye.
All right, yeah.
Okay, and you're sitting there on top of that tree stand, all right?
Killing
All right.
poor helpless little birdies.
And he was looking at that deer, and he was saying, okay, I really love it here, and I don't want to do that. And so what did you do? You decided, I'm going to expand my household here. I'm going to make my home here. And to Keith's point, you will be able to give a piece of that property to one of your kids if you want to, and they can expand there. And that's great. But that's your vision and your right, your personal property owner. And so, yes, it can be a guideline, but property owners should have a reasonable expectation to think that their government is going to follow through with what they say they're going to do. And I'm not,
Again, the comp plan does.
You can't say no. Okay, I'm just
saying
they
no
should have
fits
a
into-
reasonable expectation.
So saying no fits into what the comp plan says. And so, and as far as me making that change, I went from a young man who had a young family that was, I just want to make some money.
Hey, you matured.
I matured.
Yeah.
So
Grew up.
I believe my
Excuse me. Sorry.
yeah, I'm working on that.
His perspective changed.
That's right.
Yeah.
He became a cranky old man.
Well, no,
Yeah. And
That's me. He's got the wrong
another
guy.
thing I'd add is that when you develop a property, I am your partner because you're not going to pay for the costs that come from that, especially if you're a developer. When you're sitting down at your beach house and we're back here sending our kids to school and raising taxes and so on, you're done. So that I am a partner. If it's going to affect me and mine, especially right out of my pocket, I participate.
I love that word partner. As you know, I've done a fair amount of developing in Fluvana County, and I will tell you, I've always felt that there was a partner at the government level, at the planning level, at the board level, and we were able to go back to this discussion of actually having a two-way conversation to make something better. It seems that was missing a little bit on this particular project. It didn't. I may be wrong. I was looking from the outside in, but eventually I want to talk a little bit about the one that's going across from the main gate, because
Or that's been
proposed.
yeah.
They've been proposed to go ahead and do that. And it's interesting because that's an SUP, which is a whole different kettle of fish than a rezoning. But I know Jerry's been anxious to
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
some
You
questions.
got a lot. That's why my fingers are going,
right.
as Tony knows here.
You good with time?
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Is everyone good with time? Because, I mean, we got a hell of a lot going on right here. So this is from someone in the lake. Daniel Pettit, welcome to the program. He's got this question. How long do you think Aqua Virginia Water will have a monopoly at Lake Monticello, and what is the maximum that Aqua can raise their prices in a year at Lake Monticello?
Do you want me to answer that? You
Yeah,
can
go
answer
ahead. Yeah.
So and Keith, correct me, I think you also know a lot of these things. So short story is they're going to have that monopoly forever until they sell it to another company or until the county buys it. The county actually chose not to buy the water system that was initially put in place by the development in Lake Monticello itself. It went private. At that point in time, they put in a rate cap and basically said they weren't going to raise the rates. It was then sold to another company, and so now we've seen our water rates go up significantly. Now, some will argue in saying that you're actually paying the fair rate for the use of water, whereas in other locations it's subsidized. But, to the homeowner who's living in the lake and paying $150 versus paying $50, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's part of the cost of living outside and further away. So unfortunately, no, unless the county buys it. And if it was to do that, there'd have to be a negotiation process. The county would have to
The
spend a
follow-up
lot of
question
money to
is,
do that.
Is the county going to buy it?
There's no conversations to buy that right now, and that would be a major infrastructure investment.
Yeah.
And so the second part is how often can they rate it? Well, they have to go to the State Corporation Commission, and I think they are limited to a 10% profit. Not a 10% increase, but a 10% profit in operation. So they go to the State Corporation Commission and ask for rate increases when their profit margin is out of line, out of there.
They actually have to maintain a 10%.
Yeah.
Meaning not even just limited to.
Yeah.
They can't fall below that, which is, again,
Now, I think
And that's
some
generally-
weird economics sometimes. But
But
think they've-
that what generates the rate increase, right? Because
Yeah.
the state looks at them and says, you are not, they actually are mandated by the state, as you said, Chris. Oh, time out, you're at 8%, you need to do a rate increase,
Right.
and then you have to go.
Why is that?
Because what they want to do is they want to have a residual amount of capital, right?
They want a buffer in case
So this-
something hits the fan.
fire.
the financial health of
Look
the
at,
infrastructure needs to be.
what was it,
I mean,
the energy company out in California where they had all the fires and a lot of their substations
sense.
were burnt
So-
down, PP&E, I think.
Firefly coming to our county, same thing. It's a regulated monopoly. It's a regulated utility. Same situation. They have to maintain. So it's not a bunch of folks sitting around a board thing going, look, we're going to raise up 5%, or I've got a rental home, or you've got a rental property, and you want to increase the rent on this. This is mandated by the state to go ahead and do that. I think the follow-up question on that, about this whole conversation around the ring of Lake Monticello, is how much excess capacity do they have?
They really don't have a ton of excess capacity
On
left
water
right
they
now.
do.
On water, my understanding is that they're currently at about 85%.
No, they got a
That's
half a
my
million
understanding.
gallons. They got a 500,000 gallons of excess. I just was on a phone call yesterday.
Okay,
about
you
it.
were, all right. So
Yeah.
it's a sewer that they only had.
It's the
85%
sewer. The sewer
capacity.
is the struggle, which brings
Okay.
back to the Zions Crossroad conversation. We're going to solve water. We also got to solve sewer, which we
Sewer.
don't really have a good plan for.
And another conversation for around Lake Monticello. Recently, we found out as a board, as long as the data is correct that somebody has reported, that there's some concern over, what do they call it, the effluent, how much
Discharge.
discharge Aqua is putting back into the Rivanna. One piece of data suggested that 41 over the past 60 months, they dumped in more than their permit allowed. I'm not saying that's true.
No, and they've actually disputed that. But we've asked our county administrator and staff to go in and have conversations and find out and get more details, because that's a very valid concern.
And that is what exactly the Board of Supervisors should be doing.
Yeah.
So well done on that. But they do have an excess capacity of a 500,000 gallons of water. And just to put that in a little perspective, Lake Monticello and its surrounding things uses about 500,000 gallons a day. So in theory, their water could double. They could double their capacity, which they would never do on that end of it. It's the sewers, the struggle, which always is their capacity.
And if I understand right, pressure, gallons per minute is potentially an issue that's growing too, because of if you do have a 3-story facility, getting the water, I think it's 1,500 gallons per minute, as long as it has sprinklers, 1,750 if it doesn't.
Well, that's a whole debate,
Pumping
and
stations.
engineers, some say 1,000, some say 1,500. As you know, I built a pressure station for Nahor, so I know
Yeah.
a little bit about that. They're building a pressure station over a Colonial Circle. So if this project across the main gate was to be approved and move forward, my assumption is they're going to have to build something. So talk about the daisy chain. They can start interconnecting pressure zones in that end of it. But you have to involve a private entity, which is Aqua Virginia.
You have Garland Knuckles, Daryl
Hey, Garland.
Hammond, Diana Shores,
great
Brittany
people.
Gray on the feed. Got a couple of TV stations watching you guys on the feed. Neil, we'll get to those comments on Twitter. Nancy Kidd, hello and welcome to the program. This comment for the panel. We're not restricting growth by being selective on how that growth is established. More options for retirees is great. However, look at Village Oaks. That started with the 55 and older front, and it sadly failed. So it's open to all. 55 and older that don't want to be at the lake typically want to be closer to resources in Charlottesville. Some comments about building a charter school in Fluvana on the side of Zion's. That is coming into the mix. This is, so anything you want to respond to there, please do. And here's an interesting one via Twitter. Rural preservation does not equal no growth. Development areas should be developed. If you increase business and fail to provide workforce housing, where do the workers live? And why are developers who put their funds at risk being portrayed as the bad guy sitting at their beach house?
Well, because there are developers who tell us things that sound good, that it's not tied to their future income, and we're the ones that are left with what comes after.
Collateral damage.
So
Yeah.
I'll be a little bit more direct about that.
And not all developers are bad. I don't mean that in any way. I made a dramatic statement, but the reality is to come tell me, for example, Southern Development, this last time they came in front of the board, they said, and it's going to bring $1 million a year worth of tax revenue. So when question and answer time came, I said, so is that gross income or after expenses? Well, it's gross income. Wait a minute. Don't tell me it's going to be $1 million in taxes. So we just need to talk and be straight. And when developers, when they do that, they're not being straight about what it means to their future and
And that's
ours.
fair, but I mean, again, this whole discussion is, if rooftops are a net negative, period, okay, let's just say you're right on that.
They are, as a rule.
Okay, all right.
The-
So let's
the
say you're
data's
right
there.
on that. Okay,
Yeah.
let's say you're right on that.
Keith disagrees on that for
at
obvious
what
reasons.
then at what point in time does every locality say we don't want anybody living here? And where do those people go to live? Because there's no housing, right?
Yeah.
So where do they go to live? I mean-
By the way, growth is coming one way or another.
Right, so-
I'm not, nobody's saying no growth. There's no way you could do
Right.
that.
So
there is places that people will go.
But-
It's all in how you
likewise-
accommodate.
And likewise, just to follow up on that, if it's all a net negative, how come each locality's tax rate isn't approximately the same? Why is it that counties like Greene, which have 29 traffic, or Louisa, or Buckingham, what's the difference as to why their tax rate is different than ours?
There's
a
different,
lot of and
Buckingham,
answers to that.
Buckingham doesn't have 64, and it's not as close to
Can I
Charlottesville.
jump in on that?
Fluvana doesn't have a nuclear power station. There's all different types of.
So let me jump into that Buckingham and transportation and Fluvana County roads. We've thanks to the show, we're actually doing quite a bit of sales out in Buckingham County. Every single one of them drive through Fluvana County to get to Charlottesville. So
They spend their money in Fluvana.
No,
Well,
they're using our roads.
that's
Can they spend their money in Fluvana? Are they spending it in Charlottesville? Or are they just wearing your infrastructure down? That's
So-
what you're saying.
Some around the lake area are spending it at Food Line because
Right.
it
Very
ends
much
up,
so.
to get to Charlottesville, it ends up the quickest way is to take the back roads through Scottsville.
That's exactly right.
Come out on 53 and head on up.
Lake Monticello, Zions Crossroads is the #1 grossing food line in the state of Virginia for its size, for its foot
Per capita.
for its
Not-
footprint.
Lake Monticello, not like you said, Lake Monticello, Zions Crossroads.
Did I
The
say
food
that?
line by
Food
the
Line,
lake.
Food Line,
Thank you.
like, yeah.
Yeah. This is from Kevin Higgins. UVA built a multi-specialty clinic in front of Dice Hammers Spring Creek. I think that is all Fluvana needs to explode in Zion's Crossroads area. And he also asked, how can Fluvana capitalize on Charlottesville's growth?
Well, we are capitalizing on it, right? I mean, the people are moving into the area, and as more people move into the area, there's more businesses that come into place. There's more developments that are happening. There's more folks that want to appreciate and love the area. I think one of the big pushes in the board, and part of I do appreciate the fact that the county is very rural in nature. I don't want people to think that that's not the case. I think we are going to try to leverage agribusiness as much as possible. We do have a very beautiful county. We have Pleasant Grove Park, which is an amazing park, and we continue to add to that place. So, I mean, we're blessed to live in this really great county. And, as people discover it, that's great.
I
I used to say to folks, who said, "Oh, you don't want to live at the lake," and I say, "Yeah, you keep on saying that. I'm just fine with that."
I remember when Pleasant Grove was purchased, and I remember that debate that at the time, $1 million purchase was a big number.
Biggest
$1 million
thing.
is a big number, period, on that. And I think that was a win. I think we achieved, that's a win-win. We talk about Pleasant Grove on the show all the time. That's an asset that I think we don't promote enough, to be frank with you. I run there, I bike there on a regular basis, and it's just not a lot of folks there on that end of it. I kind of want to go back, because I have an actual personal reason for this. I want to go back to the project across the street. Because, I have...
You're talking Charlie and Frank's.
No, sir.
Which one are you talking about?
This is the Village Oaks Senior Center. This is
That's theirs. That's theirs. So that's Southern Development.
Is Southern Development running an application on that?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't even look into. I thought.
It's Village Oaks. That's a Southern Development.
No, I believe.
No, it's actually being done by the Methodist Church.
The Methodist Church. Okay.
Well,
it's on their land. They're selling it to
Right.
the Methodist, assuming the SUP goes through.
Right.
Right. So it's on Southern Development property.
so it's Southern Development at this point.
Southern Development took over the management of kind of Village Oaks at that point.
But the applicant,
But the applicant
it
Methodist
is the
Church.
Virginia United Methodist Housing Development Corporation, which is a senior housing nonprofit that focuses on 50 to 60% AMI, area medium income, on the end of it. And I'm real. My mother and father, Pop, and we're having this real discussion. They can't live where they are. They can't afford. These are going to be 2 bedrooms, somewhere around $1,000 or something like that. And then we're having this conversation because they want to stay in Fluvana County to go ahead and do this end of it. But this is an SUP, and that's a huge difference between, and I want folks to understand the difference between a rezoning and an SUP, right? A rezoning, because of the new state laws, you as an elected body can't say, developer Jerry, I want you to proffer this. That's illegal. You can't do that any longer. But an SUP, you can do conditions, right? You can say, I will approve this under these certain conditions. And I believe this is coming before your board next month, right?
Yeah.
Pretty soon on that end of it. So look, I know it's fresh. Anywhere you guys want to go tackling this project, or stay away from it, or?
I'm of the same mind you are, in the sense that there is no real place for folks that age out of the lake to go. And I've had neighbors that have aged out. They come into Charlottesville. They go, to live closer to their kids, whatever the case may be. However, there is that stage in between where you don't want to take care of your yard. You don't want to go up those stairs, but you still love your neighbors. You still want to go to the golf club. You still want to hang out at the Dogwood, or at Wahoo Barbecue now, or Blue 53. You still want to do all those things and live in the county that you've lived in for 30 years. So to me, when we talk about rooftops, we also need to talk about the different types of inventory that we have. This is a type of inventory that is lacking in the county. And so you can take all the same arguments that were applied to the development on the other side of the lake and, shift these, because now this isn't, as you said, a rezoning. I think it's currently approved for 2 stories, and they're trying to get it to 3 stories.
It looks like
So-
it looks like a 3-story. I literally just printed this out this morning.
Yeah, so they could go to 2 stories, but the question is, if they're asking for 3 stories, is the demand there? And if the demand's going to be there, why would we not do that? And many of the arguments around traffic and around water use and around kids going to school, those are all gone when you're talking about a senior development location, right?
But I'm going to play devil's advocate on this for a second and toss it a little bit to Chris to talk about the history of the parcel, right? That's where the Southern Development comment came out. I believe that it is not age restrictive. Is that correct? I believe that parcel is no longer age restrictive, the whole parcel. Didn't they change that at some point in time?
Well, as I remember it, when originally they came and they said they wanted to do this development over there, and the whole thing was going to be age restrictive.
It was 2003,
And this is,
2004.
and again, if I remember correctly, I might get part of this wrong, and it was going to have a pretty high level of care for older folks, And that level of care, which included, I think, if I remember right, hospital beds and so on, the state has to approve only X amount of beds in the state can you have. And so they didn't have that approval, if I remember right, and that didn't.
2005 it was approved.
Okay. And so whatever happened wasn't, it went down in a level of care that it was going to have. So it ends up now as this new level that's really the best for Fluvana. And then that didn't happen. And then, so now, yeah, a lot of it's not age restricted. And it's just that line keeps getting moved. And I think some of this, if I remember right, some of this, for them to get to the 2 buildings and get up to 120, some of what was supposed to be business zoned is going to have to be changed.
That's exactly right. So it's 2, I'm looking at the application as we speak. There's 2 parcels, and they're combining the 2 parcels. And I don't think they're requesting, as I'm reading it, increase in density, but I think when you combine the 2 parcels, it gets them to the density that they need. But I guess the point I'm trying to make, gentlemen, just for the sake of a conversation, if this is a conditional, right, you could put in it that it must be 55 and over. You have the authority and the right to do that.
Yeah.
No,
right?
I believe the clarification, I mean, you've got the application in front of you, but I'm pretty sure this is, a senior retirement area.
Multiple people are saying on the feed, as of 2019, it's no longer age restrictive.
Yeah.
So they did come to the board.
The development or this piece?
The whole development.
Viewers, please offer some perspective here. You got multiple people chiming in on this.
So let me qualify this.
Yeah.
So the applicant, the owner, let's not point fingers, please, on the show, went back to the Board of Supervisors and changed the proffers on it to remove the age restrictive on the end of it. And the point I'm trying to say is a compromise. You went back to the conversation of everybody getting to a table and do this. The difference here is with an SUP, you can have that conversation with the applicant and say,
Well, and the applicant did come back and ask for that change because the market had changed dramatically when that happened, right?
No, I'm talking about this
So,
current
no, I know,
applicant.
but I'm
This current.
talking about previously when the restriction was removed on Village Oaks, was because the market had changed significantly at that point in time. That was their argument that they brought forward.
Right.
And so, yeah, it didn't turn out to be that way. But I don't know what the numbers are.
And
in terms
now
of how
will we
many
hear
people are-
that the market has
Yeah, but-
changed where that's no longer the best use to have economic development on the front there? Of course it'll be the best use to have economic development. That's revenue versus cost. But now the best thing for Fluvana is that if we remove that, and we'll build more
But
apartments.
your assumption, again, this is where I think it's a failed assumption to say rooftops always cost you money. A senior development doesn't have kids going to school. Okay, that's a major cost for the county. So if they don't have kids going to school, you've now reduced your net rate in terms of income coming into the county from real estate taxes to the number of kids, right?
It's not just about kids.
What-
Older communities often require more emergency services.
And now they have to pay for those services when they use ambulance services. So they go to their insurance
That's an
company and they do
important
that.
thing to
So,
point out, Tony.
yeah.
Most people do not know that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this comment came in from Brittany. If we're going to focus on senior growth, then we need to put more money into our health, emergency, and fire management teams. 120 units plus is going to be a huge stress on current volunteer-based squads.
And they already can't get enough people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a fair comment. Brittany is offering some good perspective.
No,
here.
and that's a challenge everywhere, right? That's a major challenge
Well, that's
everywhere.
the great
we
resignation.
outsourced, to.
If I can interrupt, I hope you won't think I'm being rude. I just need to text somebody because of
Yeah,
the time
absolutely,
schedule we're on.
Absolutely.
And-
we
yeah.
got maybe like 8 minutes here.
Okay.
Okay.
So rescue was outsourced, and even the outsourcer is having challenges keeping up with the demand. So the reality is a lot of counties are facing this struggle. And please, if you're interested, volunteer. Okay, we need your help.
Amen.
All right.
How about go ahead, Keith. And we
But
got
from a budget perspective, just so people understand, if this 3-story, and my hope is that it becomes age restricted, so it's 55 and over, so my parents have some place to go. We can keep the people in Fluvana County on that end of it. But if you call 911 from there, there's a fee that somebody pays for the service. Is that correct?
The ambulance, cost recovery. Right?
Correct,
So,
yeah.
So here's the viewers are smart, dude. Special use permit, Virginia United Methodist Housing Development Corporation, a request for a special use permit to construct senior multifamily dwellings by increasing the maximum gross residential density above 2.9 dwellings per acre, units per acre, with respect to 5.9 plus
Thank you for the correction. I misread that.
per acre. Smart viewers on the program today.
Sure.
How about this question for you guys? And this is a good question for Chris. Then I got a question myself for Tony. How do you, and this is personally for me, as someone who wants to get involved with what you guys do in Albemarle, how do you manage your responsibility to the Cunningham district and your constituents with Fluvana County in totality? Because what the Cunningham district may want may be very different than what Fluvana County wants.
And the same with the
totality.
Ravenna district.
Yeah, same for Tony.
Sure,
So for
absolutely.
instance, my district, the Rivanna and Albemarle, Scottsville and Albemarle, what's something very different than say what the Rivanna wants, Samuel Miller wants, et cetera. So how do you balance that?
Well, one is they have to elect people they believe represents that. And so in the redistricting, they talk some about, well, we're all one county. And amen, we sure are. Our kids go to the same schools, no matter where you're at in the county and so on. While there's a reason we elect delegates and senators and so on that are from where we're from, because we want people that understand what it's like to live where we live. And so I'd like to think that I was elected because the Cunningham district I've lived in so much of my life, spent so much of my life out there, and I believe represent and want some of the same things that people do there.
And
So it
Chris-
starts with who you elect.
Chris grew up in the lake too, so I mean.
I grew up in the lake and then
Yeah.
raised my family in part over in Scottsville
Right.
when we were young,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I know the whole district, yeah.
Yeah, no, he's the meld, if you would,
Yeah.
of Fluvana County. And I think that's, the point is, yes, we represent our district, but we represent our county. And, figuring out how that balance works is depends on the situation. It's challenging, but, if you live inside the lake, you still use the roads around it. You still use our schools, you still do all those other things. So it's not just about what you care about there. I mean, yes, I would have loved it if Fluvana County had bought Aqua, or bought it when it was offered at that point. in
You
time.
didn't
but
want
that
it.
would have that
You
would
did
have
not
required a
want it.
major investment.
You didn't want it.
I say I would have loved it because as somebody who pays them, it would be nice to have that subsidized. I'm not saying they're charging an unfair rate. I'm just saying it would be nice to have that
I was
subsidized.
part of that process, as you know, because I was trying to get the acres approved where I live. Just to talk about the history, Lake Monticello owned Lake Monticello Service Company. It was a wholly owned, and they never made any repairs for decades and decades. And talk about affluent discharge. I actually still have Polaroid pictures of, and I won't be descriptive because I just won't, but the sewer pump stations were flowing directly into the lake, and DEQ
Was that affluent or effluent?
I'm a Yankee. Give me a break, will you? Ask me to say realtor.
No.
Don't ask me to do that.
Donna Patton's watching.
Donna Patton's watching? Yeah, I'm going to get a text here. Speak English, damn it.
You're doing a good job, Smith.
Of speaking English? Thank
You're
you.
doing a good job.
Thank you.
Hosting the show, you're doing a good job.
Just accent.
We had a whole debate about that on another show. But the reality, thank you for losing our ADD just kicked in.
What were you saying?
Huh? Hello, my name
Squirrel?
is Keith. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you. But it was $20-30 million worth of improvements that Lake Monticello couldn't do.
Yeah.
Sold it to a company by the name of Aquasource.
Yep.
You remember this. Aquasource was an Enron company. It went bye-bye, and nobody wanted it. It actually went into bankruptcy. It went into foreclosure, all the assets. And Aqua America / Aqua Virginia grabbed it and bought it. And unfortunately, the negotiations, and again, I was deeply involved in this, the negotiations between Lake Monticello and Aquasource, the Enron company, said, as Tony said, you're not going to raise rates. I believe it was 15 years. I may have it wrong on that end of it. And that's the reason why all of a sudden we got hit instead of these slow incremental increases on that end of it. Just a little history on water and science course. Lake Monticello.
Guys,
More
good.
questions, or we're wrapping up?
We're up against the gun here.
Yeah.
Do we have a final word here? We're about 40 minutes away from our next show, and Unfortunately, we don't have to scramble, but this gentleman over here is
The
one who's gonna end up
directors,
having to
we're getting the
scramble.
evil eye from
Yeah,
the-
he's the one who's going to have to scramble to get ready for the next one. How about some final words from you guys?
Go ahead.
Let you go first.
No, go ahead.
Look, I think this is great. I mean, this is the kind of conversation that is really important for the public to hear, to get different perspectives. I'm sorry we didn't take more questions, but the give and take, the ideas, the sharing, this is why you have board members. And to Chris's point, you elect your board members based on the vision that they are talking about and that appeals to you. You're always going to see a push and pull between a rural and a suburban / growth divide and what that means and how that looks. But the more we talk about it, the more questions we ask, the better we become at answering the questions in their totality, and the better we become as a community. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about Fluvana, because it is a county that I love deeply, and really appreciate the opportunity again.
I always say I love Fluvana, and I know all of us do. And
Fairchild stickers around town.
Yeah.
indicate
I mean, I think
Did you
they're all on
notice those?
his back, but I don't know.
I saw one on 4th Street in Charlottesville.
there's actually one in Wichita, Kansas.
I mean, I saw a lot of them.
yeah.
So to
Saw them
Tony,
at Fluvana football games.
to Tony's comment, the last show you guys were on, we went out for lunch afterwards, and we were walking the downtown mall, and I didn't know it, but he put like a dozen.
I saw them.
Yeah, I had him in my pocket. I
did
keep
see
patting him on the back, telling him how much I love him.
I was like, wow, that's great.
yeah.
He loves you.
Interestingly, they were very similar to the I Heart Seville logo. How about that?
And I don't mind using the word protect. I want to help protect Fluvana. That the growth pressures are there, and they will continue to be there. Growth is coming, and I want to not react to it. I want to plan for it. And our ways and thoughts of how to do it are going to differ, but without having the conversation, you don't have the opportunity to go, I didn't think about that.
Absolutely.
So I can say this because I've known you for three and a half decades on this stuff. If you got something wrong, you'll admit it.
Yeah.
Right? And you're always open to new ideas. I can say the same thing for Tony. We've known each other for about 20
Yeah, but
years.
he's always wrong. Huh?
And I'm okay with that.
I'm trying to take the high road, Tony.
Yeah, see?
No, absolutely not.
But to the viewers and the listeners, this is exactly what I hoped we would have done today.
And you may consider a part 2 here, because I see maybe anywhere between 20 or 30 questions we didn't get to today.
So thank you. So this is a series of conversations that Jerry and I have started. We normally do it on Fridays, right? But because of schedules, we couldn't do this. So, gentlemen, you are going to get back on the schedule. I please hope you guys will agree to come on.
I enjoy it.
Take these 30 questions.
Absolutely.
To both of your points, the only way we're all going to get better is to have this conversation open. And as Jerry reminds me all the time, on a format that never goes away.
Yeah, lives forever on the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, this is social media being used for the good as opposed to dividing the community.
So I
Right,
do
yes.
apologize to the viewers and listeners, but we will get to these questions.
Great.
We should.
Look forward to that.
Real talk, guys. Tony O'Brien, Chris Fairchild, and Keith Smith. I'm Jerry Miller. Judah Wickhauer is the North Star and compass of the program. He's behind the scenes, and thank you to J-Dubs. We will be back in Jesus 39 minutes on the I Love Seville show, so please join us on that program. We'll scramble a little bit to get that program for you guys on air. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you,
us
gentlemen.
today.
Thank you all.
His next guest is Jesus? Is that right?
No, Jesus, I didn't realize the time is what I meant.
Well, that's what happens.